What is going on, everybody? Shwazy here, and in today's video I have the honor to bring to you a 2022 Genesis G80. Now, for those of you that aren't familiar with what Genesis actually is, it is the luxury brand of Hyundai. So just like Infiniti is to Nissan and Lexus is to Toyota, Genesis is to Hyundai. And this brand is actually one of the newest luxury car brands. It was only released in 2015, and it started with the G80. And this is the all-new restyled version that was released last year. And I'm excited to talk about all of the fun, cool, and exciting features of this wonderful new luxury vehicle. So without further ado, let's get started and talk everything you need to know about the Genesis G80. Okay, so where exactly does the Genesis G80 sit in terms of its competition? Well, as you can see, the vehicle is pretty long. It's not a compact sedan. It's actually meant to compete with the likes of the Mercedes Benz E Class, the Audi A6, the Lexus GS or ES, since the GS is no longer around, and the BMW 5 Series, and the dozens of other competitors that actually sit in this market. So this is a mid-size luxury sedan, a sports sedan technically, but it's not really that sporty. And even though this is essentially the same underpinnings as the very, very popular Genesis GV80, which is the SUV version of this vehicle, Genesis still invested a lot of resources into the sedan. And so we'll show off all of those cool features, but I first want to talk about the price point. So pricing for the Genesis is really its main selling point, aside from the looks and everything else we'll discuss, but that's really their value proposition here, because the starting price of a Genesis is about $48,250. Now, you can get it upwards of over $70,000 if you fully equip the vehicle with all of the bells and whistles, but when you actually start looking into those numbers, that is about 10 to 12 grand lower than a similarly equipped German luxury brand. And so this vehicle's value proposition is it offers almost the same amount of features, if not more features, and some very unique ones that we'll discuss today, but it offers those at a lower price point. Okay, now you may be wondering, what color option is this? And it's very hard to pronounce, but it's called Uyuni White, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. It's essentially just the white color on Genesis's website, but it is a $575 option. Now, the interior, which we'll get to in just a second, but let me give you a brief glimpse. This is called Havana Brown, and it's absolutely gorgeous. I actually really love this color. I think it's the best interior color option that they offer. But this particular vehicle, with its equipment and everything all in, is about $58,000, just shy of that, plus taxes, obviously. But for less than 60 grand, you get a lot of cool features. Starting off with the engine, Genesis offers two different variants. This one specifically is the lower trim level. It's a 2.5 liter turbo direct injection 4-cylinder engine, but they do also offer a 3.5 liter twin turbocharged V6. And so if you want something a little bit sportier, you're going to want to go for that one, but we'll talk about driving dynamics of this particular engine later on in the video. Now, this engine is no slouch either, though. It produces just around 300 horsepower and 311 pound-feet of torque. And gas mileage is not sacrificed either. You get about 22 in the city and 30 on the highway for a combined 25. Now, 0 to 60, if you guys are wondering, for this particular engine, with the all-wheel drive, as this one is equipped, is about 5.9 seconds. So just around 6 seconds, 0 to 60, which really isn't that bad considering this is essentially the entry-level engine. Now, it is mated regardless of what engine you get with an 8-speed in-house designed automatic transmission, and we'll show you how it accelerates when we get behind the wheel. Now, the first real feature I want to talk about is the exterior styling. I mean, you can't look at this car without immediately noticing that this vehicle looks different than any other vehicle on the road. Now, if you guys have seen the Genesis GV80, which is the SUV version of this vehicle, you'll definitely see some design resemblance between the two, and obviously that's just the design language of Genesis going forward. Starting off with the front, you have this beautiful dark chrome type of crisscross shape to the grille. It really is a massive grille, probably one of the largest in the industry, and I personally love it. I know a lot of people are hating big grills and they're trying to stay away from them, but manufacturers like them. It sells, and I think it looks really good in this application. Kind of comes down to a peak over here, almost similar to the Genesis emblem itself. You kind of have it come down to a point here at the bottom, and the same with the grille. You do have even more grille located here down at the bottom, and it actually is a real air vent. This actually goes directly back towards the tires, so it's a true functioning air inlet. It's not just there for design like some of the other German competitors have. And coming up to the top here, you have, this is the distinct Genesis look of these quad headlights. Now, this is a standard feature regardless of what trim level you get. You have 4 headlights over here, high beams and low beams, and you've got this beautiful daytime running light being split up between the two. Now, briefly talk about the key as I light it up. This is a typical Genesis key, nothing too crazy to it, but all in all, feels really good, kind of has a nice texture to it. But as you can see when I click the buttons, there's those 2 beautiful running lights, and what I love about it is it actually extends all the way to the side. So your side marker lights or your turn signals over here, instead of being located on the mirror like they are with all the German competitors, they're actually located on the side of the vehicle, and I think it really gives a beautiful look as it just sweeps across to the side. Really unique. I really think this is kind of a first for the industry, and I want it to continue because I love that look. Coming over here, this is the advanced trim, which we'll talk about here in just a few minutes, but this comes with these 19-inch alloy wheels, and some people don't like them. I personally love them. I think for being stock, quote-unquote, wheels for a manufacturer, these look really nice. Now, before we go to the side, I want to briefly talk about the hood, which has this nice 2 bulges coming down towards the center emblem. Gives it a really muscular, kind of stately appearance to it, and a lot of people actually compare this vehicle or Genesis in general to like a Bentley or something like that, and I can definitely see the resemblance. Now, coming over to the side, we already mentioned the side marker lights, but you do have some chrome over here that's very tasteful and nice, and it follows all across the window as well, and even on the door handle, so you got some chrome here, but it's not overdone. It's just a tasteful amount of chrome. Another feature I want to point out, or a cool design aspect, is you have a piece of chrome that goes all the way on this side skirt all the way to the back, so it almost connects. Similar to how the headlights connect with the side marker lights, you have this chrome that wraps all the way around and goes all the way to the rear reflectors. Now, coming over to the rear, let's talk about it. Very similar design to the front, where you have this dual setup for the taillights, or quad taillights essentially, and when you click the button, very beautiful look to it. Again, you have that sweeping LED that goes all the way across, all the way to the side. Sometimes manufacturers skimp out on the side, but this one has it wrap around, really gives a nice look to it. And I really want to talk about this body line that goes all the way from the back and kind of gives this a wide body stance to it, just for the rear end, because then it kind of fades into the sheet metal. And then you have a secondary line that runs all the way from essentially the rear tail light to the front headlights going down the hood of the vehicle. But very, very stunning design in my opinion. I personally think this is one of the best looking mid-size sedans on the market, and I really like how they made it more of a sloping roofline, similar to kind of a fastback Audi A7 look to it, but it is a traditional trunk. So your trunk will open with this beautiful button over here, or if you stand by it for long enough, about 4 beeps, it will open on its own. You guys may be familiar with that feature when I reviewed a Kia Carnival. They had a very similar feature like that. But trunk space, not too bad. It's not like a class leader or anything, but you do have a ski pass-through over here into the rear seats. Unfortunately, those second row seats do not fold down, so all you get is that little ski pass-through, and that's pretty much it. So if you want to fold down the seats for more space, you don't have that as an option, but you do have a power closing trunk. So if you push that button, it will shut on you and it will blink the tail lights. Now, if you do want to open it without having the key in your pocket, you just push this button and it will open, but I'm going to step away real quick, otherwise it's going to open automatically again. That feature, by the way, you can shut off with the infotainment screen. Last thing I want to point out is you do have this dual exhaust regardless of what trim level you get. It's got a little bit of chrome on it as well, and overall a really nice rear end to the vehicle. It kind of gives it a more luxury appearance appearance than I would say a sporty appearance. Now that we're done with the exterior, let's jump inside and talk about some of the interior features that I really love about this vehicle. As a side note, as you approach the vehicle with the key in your pocket, the mirrors will actually fold out automatically. Just a nice luxurious touch. Now, getting inside, let's briefly talk about the use of materials, because I think that's a very important note to make, especially for what is considered a luxury vehicle. You do have soft touch materials all the way up here, and an important touch for any luxury vehicle is you still have soft touch material down here at the bottom where you put your cup holders and some spare change. This is all soft touch, and that's where you can really tell the difference between a regular car and a luxury vehicle. Everything you touch here, even stuff you don't touch like this area, is soft touch material. I really love the design of the door. You've got these 3 stripes to it. It kind of goes across into this beautiful speaker grille. This is a Lexicon speaker that we'll talk about here in a minute with the advanced trim, and really nice use of buttons and materials. You've got this open pore wood trim that's very nice to touch. It definitely feels like real wood. And then the window switches are aluminum, and you can just feel that they got a really nice weight to them, and overall really nice texture to some of these buttons. I mean, no surface here has been untouched. It's just a really premium looking and feeling interior of the door panel. Going over to the seats, similar design styling to these lines that curve across the door. You have the same on the seats, goes all the way up, and a really nice seat to sit in. It's actually a decent size. Sometimes you sit in these vehicles and it feels like the seat is just a couple inches shorter than it should be, especially when you're sitting in a small sports sedan. I think these are the perfect size. They actually can fit an adult and not feel uncomfortable. They are 12-way power adjustable seats, and they are also heated and ventilated for the passenger and driver side as well. So now, sitting in the cabin is a wonderful place to be. Turn the vehicle on real quick. You do have the automatic seat move forward so that you're in a more comfortable driving position. But can we just take a minute to discuss this steering wheel, which is really nice. Not only is it two-tone and matches the interior of the cabin, but it's also technically a 2-spoke / 4-spoke steering wheel, and it's unique. And you do have a plethora of buttons. So this is your cruise control. This is just your menu to navigate the instrument cluster. You've obviously got this hard touch plastic, but you have the Genesis emblem. And then coming over to the left side, you do have your volume controls and your tune buttons as well. So let's shut the door real quick and let's talk about how that sounds. It's a very insulated cabin, and I'm going to mention exactly how well insulated this interior is when we take it for a test drive, but this has got to be one of the quietest cabins I've ever driven in. Coming over on the left side, you do have your controls for the brightness of the screen, your auto start stop, which is also very smooth and quiet, and your traction control along with your parking brake. Now, coming over to the instrument cluster, this is the more basic version. So this is actually an 8-inch LCD display, and there's not really that much functionality to it. You can go through some of your oil temperatures, some of your tire pressures, so all of the simple stuff, your trip odometer. But if you want something a little bit more robust in its instrument cluster, you're going to want to upgrade to the Prestige, which has a giant 12-inch all-digital display. So if you guys can take a look here, on the left-hand side, it's actually analog, but still very nicely done. You've got nice aluminum touches, but on the right-hand side, it's an all-digital display, but you do have a real ring around the screen, which is made out of aluminum, so it's kind of a nice integration between analog and digital. But if you get the 12-inch display, you also get more functionality and you get a 3D display. Now, I've never seen this myself up close in person, but it's supposed to give you a look as if the numbers are popping out from the dashboard. Now, I do want to point out before we move to the center, these are your paddle shifters over here. They are made of aluminum. They have a nice feel to them. And can we just talk about this turnstock over here? You've got this nice aluminum. This is real metal. It doesn't feel plasticky or anything. Maybe it is, but it feels really, really nice to touch. That is a nice feature to add instead of just making this whole thing black plastic. Now, I briefly want to talk about this section up over here. A place you're never going to touch is also soft touch material. I believe it is covered with this synthetic leather, but whatever it is, it's soft to the touch. It's not hard touch plastic like you'd find in very many other vehicles, maybe even some German vehicles. Everything all the way across that rear section over there is soft touch material, and then obviously up here is soft touch as well. You've got this beautiful leather. Now, this is not real leather. This is actually just a leatherette material. So if you're looking for something that actually has real leather in it, you're going to want to upgrade to the Prestige package. This one does not have that, but I got to say this leather feels just as nice as any other real leather. If you hadn't told me this is leatherette, I probably wouldn't have believed it. Now, the creme de la creme about this interior is obviously this 14.5-inch touchscreen, and this is absolutely massive. I don't know if it's an industry leader, but it seems like it might be. 14.5 inches is huge, and it's very, very responsive. I think this is one of the major strengths of this vehicle, is this is a very, very quick to learn, quick to, swipe, and very responsive touchscreen that has some really cool functionality that we'll talk about here in just a second. But it has a really minimalistic interior design to it. It's almost maybe kind of like Tesla, because all you have is a screen here, everything else is wide open, and then you have, again, the swooping lines that come over to the passenger side, similar to the driver's side. And I do want to point out this beautiful piece of wood. Now, it's the same type of open pore wood that we have on the door. This has a nice piece of wood that goes all the way across to the passenger side, and it's almost as if the hazard button is integrated into the wood itself, and same with the start stop button, which also has a really cool look to it. That is a very nice design touch, and if you do opt for the 3.5 liter Sport, this will actually be carbon fiber, which also has a really cool design to it, but I kind of prefer this wood look because this is a luxury vehicle, and this exudes luxury with this nice open pore wood over here. Now, coming down to this center stack over here, this is where you have a lot of your climate controls and quick access buttons. And this is actually a touchscreen. And what's nice about it is it has haptic feedback, which you can adjust on the infotainment screen. So similar to the QX60 that I reviewed a few weeks ago, this vehicle will actually let you know if you've pushed the button or not. And it's a very easy to use, quick responsive screen that has really no issues. Probably one of the quickest responding climate control screens I've used. And then you can adjust your temperature over here, as is standard amongst most vehicles. Coming down here to the bottom, you do have this little slot over here that in the more premium trims, you have a wireless charging slot. But for this one, it's more of a storage compartment with some USB ports, but you can quickly hide that out of the way and hide your cables. And then over here on the right hand side, again, that open pore wood, and you do have 2 cup holders. Now, I want to talk about this section over here because this is pretty unique to the Genesis. Coming up here, you do have your volume controls, which is this beautiful aluminum type of material that's got actually a texture to it, and same with the 2 knobs. Really beautiful job for Genesis. I really like the materials they use. This aluminum look to it has this nice premium feel, makes it feel more luxurious. And then let's talk about this. What is this thing? Because this is not the gear selector. This is actually something that can control the infotainment screen. So not only is this a touchscreen, but you also have the functionality of being able to use this, and it will actually scroll through all the settings. Now, take a listen. This is kind of how it feels like, because it's hard to tell in videos what it's like. It's kind of got a notchy feel to it, and it's got a texture. So if you're hunting around over here, you could easily find it because it's got a raised bevel to it. But you just swipe around, and that way you can use it almost similar to kind of the X-Drive system in BMWs. But then this center section is actually a haptic feedback touchscreen area. So if I scroll through, as you can see, I can scroll through all the different settings just by swiping my finger. Now, obviously it's quicker to just use the rotary knob, but if I want to, I can just swipe across and then push a button and it will activate. Since the touchscreen is a little far away, so this is kind of me reaching just to get a hold of it, you're gonna probably wanna use this center controller over here when you're driving, just because it's a little bit easier to reach than the touchscreen. Now, coming down below this little rotary knob is the gear selector. And this has gotta be something out of a Bentley or Rolls-Royce, because it is absolutely gorgeous. I mean, take a look at that. You've got this beautiful aluminum raised edging on the side. And to quote Jurassic Park, they spared no expense, because this top section is actually glass. So you can feel it. This is a glass material with some beautiful aluminum on the side, and then you've got this red park button, but nonetheless, just a beautiful design to it. Now, coming over to the right over here, you have your drive modes, and then your parking cameras, and then your park assist sensors. Now, speaking of drive modes, what I really like about this interior is when you change the drive modes, your display will actually change. And I really love sport mode because it looks like a lightsaber, as my wife described describes it when you're in sport mode for the RPM. And take a look at the numbers as I rev the engine. What's cool is the numbers will actually increase in size depending on what RPM you're at, and I really like the look of that. Now, the other drive modes are not as interesting. This is Eco. Nothing too crazy. It's still pretty cool and futuristic, but not as cool as your sport mode. Now, coming over to the center, you do have two openings over here and a pretty decent sized cubby. Nothing too crazy, but I do like that it opens from the center. Now, before we jump to the back, I also want to note that this section over here, right below this wood trim piece, is also soft touch material. So if you're resting your knee on here on long road trips, you're gonna still be comfortable because this is soft touch. Kudos to Genesis for doing that, because oftentimes this is a hard touch plastic material. Another nice touch that I like that I've seen in other vehicles is when you put your seatbelt on, the vehicle will actually tighten the seatbelt as if hugging you in place. It's nothing crazy, but just a nice luxurious touch to the interior cabin. Okay, now getting into the back seats, also a very nice place to be. This is also soft touch material up here, although it seems a little bit firmer than the front seats, but still soft touch. Same with down here. Everything here is just as premium, very similar design to the front row as well, and you do have that open pore wood. Now, the seat design is just as magnificent in the back as it is in the front. Getting into the back seat, this is probably one of the largest interior cabins for this class. This is larger than the E Class and the 5 Series. You have way more legroom. This is me sitting behind myself, and as you can see, I've probably got about 6 inches of space, and I've got plenty of headroom. I've probably got about 3 inches above me. So really comfortable cabin, very spacious on the inside, and a very nice flow of design from the front row into the second row. Now, I do love that you can still see that giant 14.5-inch touchscreen from the back, but coming down here, there's nothing too exciting. You do have your second row climate control. This vehicle does have 3 zones, so 2 for the passenger and the driver, and then 1 over here for the back. Now, the only other option to really talk about back here is if you put down the center armrest, this vehicle has heated seats in the second row. So by pushing this button, you got 3 different settings. You also do have cup holders back here. And then a really cool party trick as well. If you push this center button over here, you will actually lower the rear sunshade. So that's really nice to have if you're trying to separate yourself from all of the common folk outside the vehicle. And then you also have a manual sunshade for both the driver and passenger side, and that's a really nice feature to have. Now, it would be nice if it was automatic, but you cannot get that as an option. It is a manual release, but nonetheless, nice to have on sunny days so that you can keep the interior cool when you're driving on long road trips. Now, one complaint I do have is in the center arm console, you do have 2 USB ports, which is nice to have to charge devices, but nowhere in this vehicle do I see any household outlet. I feel like Genesis probably should have stuck one right below this center climate control on the second row, and that way you could plug in a video game or keep people entertained in the second row. Jumping back to the front, I briefly want to talk about some of the cool features of this infotainment screen. The first one has to do with the sounds of nature. Now, by going into your media settings, you do have a list of different types of sounds of nature, and take a listen. This is you in a lively forest. There's rainy day, snowy village, and it's just meant to keep you a little bit calm, but hopefully not let you fall asleep when you're driving down the road. Now, the next cool feature is if you swipe over and click the seat button, you can actually control the passenger seat using this infotainment screen. So if you want to lift the seat up, you just push and hold, and the seat will actually move, and you can do that in pretty much any position you want to. And so if somebody happens to be in the rear and you want to adjust this seat, well, rather than having to reach over and adjust it, you can just navigate it with the screen, which is a really nice feature to have. Now, another cool graphic feature is I talked about how you can control the climate control down in this touchscreen over here, but you can also control it up here as well. By clicking on the climate button, you have this really cool graphic interface that shows you exactly where the air is blowing, kind of similar to a Tesla. It even changes color depending on the temperature, and then you can also adjust the positions of where the air is blowing, but overall, a pretty cool look to the interior of the cabin. Speaking of climate control, if you go through the setup button and you click the seats, you can actually balance exactly how much the seat is heating the seat back and how much it's heating the seat cushion. So you can have a preference towards the cushion versus the back, or you can keep it right in the middle as it was, but I've never seen that on any vehicle where you can adjust the sensitivity of where it heats what sections of your rear end. Now, another very unique thing that I've never seen in any other vehicle is called Smart Posture Care. And this vehicle will actually allow you to input your information, so your height, your weight, and it will adjust the position of the seat for the most optimal posture and seating position. So just as an example, let's input this standard 5'6", 5'7", inseam of 30, and that's your weight. If you hit posture analysis, it will analyze just like a computer would, and then it'll tell you apparently where I'm sitting right now is very bad posture. So by hitting adjust posture, the vehicle will actually move the seat forward to the proper position and raise and lower it so that you have the appropriate posture when driving down the road. Now, the last thing I want to point out on this infotainment screen is the ambient lighting, and that's actually located down here right below the wood trim, also on the doors and also in the rear. So it's kind of throughout the cabin, but more specifically, I want to talk about the options that you can go through. So not only can you control the brightness, which is kind of obvious and standard, but there's like a million different colors that you can select. So if you hit set custom color, you can go through a flywheel of about a dozen different colors. And another really cool touch for this vehicle is, just like I was telling you earlier how this is a piece of glass, the colors will actually change inside of the gear selector based on whatever color you choose. So if you hit purple, it's going to change to purple. You can change it to blue, red, whatever color your mood is in, it will adjust the color of that gear selector with the ambient lighting in the car. Now I see why they made this out of glass. Okay, now I oftentimes get asked, okay, what comes in what trim level? Because sometimes the vehicles that I have aren't exactly the ones you're going to purchase. So let's talk about that. There's really 3 different trim levels that you can get regardless of what engine you choose. That's just the regular base trim, there's the advanced package, and then there's the prestige package. This particular one is the middle point, it's the advanced package, but let me talk about what each trim level includes. Now, out of the box, the standard trim level actually comes packed with lots of features. First of all, you do get 18-inch wheels. These are 19s, but you do get 18s on the standard trim level. You also get the same full quad LED headlights and taillights, so you're not gonna get any halogens. You're still gonna have this exact same look if you choose the base trim level, and you also get the same front and rear parking sensors. The base trim also comes with rain sensing wipers. Now, the base still comes with the same 12-way power adjustable leatherette seats, and they still have heated functionality for both the front and second row occupants. You also still get a heated steering wheel, and you have that same exact ambient lighting that I talked about earlier in the video. Furthermore, the base trim still gets this exact same size 14.5-inch infotainment screen and the same 8-inch instrument cluster that you're seeing in my vehicle. And you have essentially every safety feature you can ask for out of the gate. So you have adaptive cruise control, highway driving assist, forward collision warning, and the list goes on. Really, the only features you can pay for is if you upgrade to the Prestige version, you will get a 360-degree camera, and you get a camera for your blind spot when you're changing lanes. And then the last feature that neither the base nor the advanced trim come with is the Smart Park feature, where you can get out of the car and actually park the vehicle with your vehicle remote. That is an option that comes on the Prestige package that mine does not have. Okay, so you may be wondering, if the base trim comes with so many features, why exactly would I pay $4,600 for the advanced trim? Well, as mentioned earlier, the advanced trim gets you these beautiful 19-inch alloy wheels, and you do get the automatic open and close trunk. Most of the other features are actually in the interior, so if you want this open pore wood trim, you gotta go for the advanced trim. And if you want this 21-speaker Lexicon audio system, which is actually really, really nice inside of the cabin, you do have to upgrade to the advanced trim. The next feature that comes with this package is the ventilated seats for both the passenger and driver side. And coming over to the rear seats, if you want 3-zone climate control and you want these rear sunshades for both the passenger and driver side and the rear occupants as well, you're gonna need to upgrade to the advanced trim as well. Okay, now the last and probably most impressive feature that comes with the advanced package is this panoramic sunroof that opens from the center, which is really cool. And it's not massive, but it is very well tinted. So if you're open and sitting in the back, you're not gonna get burned, and that is something that comes with the advanced package. Now, if you wanna pay an additional $3,700 and upgrade to the Prestige trim, you'll actually get real leather seating on the inside. You'll also get 16-way power adjustable instead of the 12. You do get a wireless charging pad in place of that storage cubby, and then last but not least, you do have power closing doors. So if you shut it about this much, the door will actually suck into place. That is an option for the Prestige package as well. Now, without further ado, let's jump behind the wheel and let's talk about driving impressions. Okay, we're setting off here in the Genesis G80. Got the wife here with me, but she's just going along for the ride. First thing you're gonna notice, and anybody who sits in this car says the same thing, is how quiet this vehicle is. Its sound deadening is to the next level. So much so that some people below like 25 miles an hour think this is an electric vehicle. And the same goes for the auto start stop. It just immediately turns off and you don't even feel it. So really impressive there from Genesis. The next thing to talk about is the ride quality, which is just as good as how quiet this vehicle is really how it soaks up bumps. This has got to be probably one of the smoothest riding vehicles I've been in. Let's do a quick acceleration. Now, you guys may be wondering, what is the 0 to 60 like? I mean, it's 6 seconds or so on paper. It probably feels about that. It's about 6 seconds. Now, the engine does make quite a bit of noise from that 2.5 liter 4-cylinder. It's not the best sounding engine, and what I will say, if you aren't aware, the vehicle does pump in some sound into the cabin to make it sound kind of like a fake engine sound. You can shut that off, I think right now in my settings. So pulling it up on the screen, we're right now in the largest amount of sound effects. So if I turn it off and do a similar acceleration, let's see if it sounds any different. It's a little bit different, but not a huge noticeable change. Either way, it's something that you kind of have to get used to. It's a 4-cylinder engine. It's not a V6 or a V8. Now, in terms of handling on these curves, we're driving in a canyon right now. It really isn't as bad as some car reviewers say. Some people say this has really no sport attributes, and I would disagree. I think it handles perfectly fine. It's pretty settled to the ground. It doesn't feel like it sways too much, but obviously they prioritize luxury over sportiness. And I think that's evident just by how quiet and comfortable the cabin is. This vehicle does have self-leveling suspension. Now, I haven't really seen how that works, but you know, if you have quite a few people in the vehicle, it's going to level itself out. And then this vehicle does come with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, although it is wired. You can't do wireless, so just keep that in mind, but that is a nice feature. Now, in terms of safety features, we mentioned them earlier in the video, but they work really well. Like, I just turned on the steering assist right now, and it's not going to work perfectly in a canyon because there's too many curves, but I did turn it on earlier when I was driving up to this canyon, and it followed a curvy road pretty well. It's probably one of the better systems I've been in, a little bit better than the Infiniti I tested about a month ago, but it's not perfect. Obviously, right now, I would have crashed into the side rail if I didn't take control of the wheel, but it doesn't bug you as often about having your hands on the steering wheel. It'll let you drive probably 30 seconds before it gives you an alert, versus the Infiniti was a little bit more pestering. Now, I do think this 2.5 liter turbo is plenty quick, especially for driving up canyons. You really don't have to go for the 3.5 liter because, again, it's not going to be the most powerful engine in its class. If you want something more powerful, you're probably going to have to move away from a G80 and go for a Mercedes, a BMW, or an Audi because they have much larger or more powerful engines than Genesis offers. If you're looking for luxury, then you might as well just go for the 2.5 liter because you're going to save a few bucks, and it's still plenty quick for straight line acceleration. Now, a couple of things I wish this car did have was some household outlets that I mentioned earlier. I do wish that the advanced trim that my vehicle has would come with a 360-degree camera. I think at this price point of almost $60K, there are some other vehicles that have that, not in the luxury segment, but in the regular segment, and so I think a 360 camera would be nice. And even though I like that the panoramic moonroof opens up all the way, I do wish it didn't have that bar right above the second row seats, because then it just kind of defeats the purpose of having a panoramic sunroof, although I understand they put that there so that the sunroof can actually open. But I gotta say, this is an amazing value proposition. Now keep in mind, the warranty for these things are 5-year, 60,000 miles bumper to bumper, and then you have a 10-year, 100,000 mile powertrain warranty for your engine and transmission. I mean, no other competitor is offering that. So if you're looking at having a reliable, luxurious vehicle, you're really only stuck with Lexus, Acura, and maybe Genesis. And so this is a really good alternative to some of those, and not having to sacrifice maybe some of the reliability concerns you may have with some German vehicles. And the nice thing about this vehicle is it turns heads. As I'm driving up this canyon, I am noticing people turning their heads, doing a double take to figure out what exactly is this vehicle. One constructor criticism I do have for the Genesis brand is, since they're investing in sedans, which not very many people are, I would say that they should create a flagship sports AMG M5 type of competitor for this Genesis G80, because I think that really gets people into the brand, is having this flagship, super fast, super powerful car that very few people actually buy, but people kind of look up to, similar to how the Hellcat is kind of the flagship for Dodge, and so people buy the lower trim levels just so that they can have something similar. I think Genesis should do the same thing, is create a powerful engine, maybe a 4-liter turbocharged or something like that, that would provide the power output and the competition for some of the German vehicles. Other than that, if you're not really caring too much about performance, then you should definitely consider the G80. Okay, well there you have it, folks. That is everything you need to know about the 2022 Genesis G80. Overall, a fantastic vehicle and an extremely formidable competitor, if not a better competitor than some of the German vehicles on the market. Now, is this the absolute best mid-size luxury sedan on the market? Well, I'll leave that up to you, because that's a pretty subjective opinion. But what I will say is, if you are cross-shopping between a Lexus, Acura, Mercedes, BMW, Audi, you gotta take a look at this one, because this should be on your shopping list. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If this is your first time stopping by, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for all of the weekly car videos. Also, find me on all of the social media. I'll put the links down in the description below at Schwazy_. And until next time, everybody, I hope you stay Schwazy, stay healthy, and have a wonderful day.